Thanks for joining us on episode 1630 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
Hey, I'm Peter Kolat, and I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to uncover your authentic self is the key, and one of the ways to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Meder. And that means that I really just, in my quote-unquote optimistic depression, I'm like, okay, maybe there is a way of actually connecting directly with the Lord. And I started digging into the Bible, started reading the Bible, started looking at like, what is it that the Bible says? And that has helped me tremendously to not only get out the stinking thinking, but discover myself.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's podcast episode, I interview Peter Kolat. I asked Peter about what an authentic self rebirth is. I also asked him about how this helps you build a true identity and true success. And Peter also shares with you how this connects to our faith journey as well. I have a great book that's been out for a while now called Inspired Living. Assemble the puzzle of your calling by mastering your time, your talent, and your treasures. You can find out more about that book over at inspiredlivingbook.com. It'll take you to a page where there's information and you can sign up to get some mailings about it as well as purchase a copy there. I'd love to see you get a copy and share with me how it impacted your world. Today's guest is Polish Peter, the author of Authentic Self Rebirth, creator of the 7 Human Drives framework, and a transformational coach affectionately known as the Polish Tony Robbins. He's coached thousands, spoken on over 100 stages, and was named Transformational Coach of the Year in both 2022 and 2024. Peter helps entrepreneurs and high achievers cut through the self-help noise, reconnect with their true identity, and build lives and businesses rooted in peace, purpose, and personal freedom. Beyond the mindset work, he grows purpose-driven companies, consults for equity, and invests in the coaching and personal development space. He's also a proud husband and father of 3, living what he teaches, building a legacy without sacrificing what matters most. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Well, thanks for having me, man. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I talked a little bit in the intro about some of the work you've done and the book and other things that you've got going on. But I always think of intros as showing us kind of the end of the journey, not the whole journey.
Yeah.
So take us back in time a little bit and talk a little bit about your journey and what has brought you to the point where this is the message you feel called to put out into the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question because I think every single person in this world, we have a story, right? And I think the more we share the story, I think it's going to help impact more lives, because we can relate to it. So, I was born in back in the communist Poland. So this was in the 70s. And as I was growing up, there were certain things that happened. Like, for instance, when I was 8 years old, my parents got divorced. And during that particular time, United States, and I think it's still the case here, I truly believe it, the United States was the land of opportunity. So everybody from Poland, when they look for making some money, they would come here. So my mom came here, ended up living with my aunt and my uncle at the time. So I lived there for 6 years. When I was 14, she came back, got me, brought me here to United States, me and my sister. No English, just a suitcase in my head, came in there, ended up in high school. Graduated high school, learned English. Well, kind of. I'm still learning, right? I don't think the language you can
It's okay.
Learn ever.
It's okay. Yeah, I was going to say, nobody really understands English. It's okay.
Yep. It's pretty complexified language, right? Went to college, got a degree in architecture, started my journey in the architecture world here in Michigan, and did a lot of design, industrial, commercial, churches, senior housing facility, all kinds of stuff like that. Got married, 3 kids. And then, though I was doing it all wrong, I was doing my business and everything. And in 2010, the end of 2010, my wife came to me and she said she wants a divorce. And that was the moment that kind of shifted my trajectory in life because I went into what I call an optimistic depression. I don't know if you can relate what that means, but, on the outside, I was, oh, everything's good. On the inside, it was, things were falling, burning down and those kinds of things, right? So during that particular time, there was about a period of, I would say, 2 years. I went through this depression, then I went into the self-discovery kind of a journey, this awakening, what I call. And during that particular time, I found out a lot about myself. Why do I think this way? Why am I this way? And because I had this question of what the heck is wrong with me? And so I tried to answer that question. That was the wrong question I was asking. And during that particular time, I ended up in the mastermind, got a coach, helping get out of my quote unquote stinking thinking. And the more I started getting out of that, mind, people were coming up to me and say, listen, you should be a coach. You should be helping others because what you've gone through, your story, what you walked through, and how you were, helping other people, I think will be impactful. So through numerous people telling me this, I ended up becoming a coach in about 2015. Then we started doing events around the country. And I've been doing this since then and transforming people's lives. And I, not just from the life perspective, but business perspective. And I feel like this is what I was made to be here for, to help people do that way. So that's in a nutshell my story. We can go into a lot more details if you have any questions, but that's where I'm at.
So when you think about, you had people telling you that you were a coach, did you feel like that was what you were supposed to do, or did you kind of fight against it?
No, I fought against them. Like, what are you talking about? Not at all. I mean, I didn't see myself, I was just asking, really curious questions. And I was like, from the very get-go, because of my like curiosity, like I said, for the 2 years during my depression, I started asking the wrong question and I started discovering about myself. So I took that thinking of trying to discover and dig underneath the layers, right? What is it that has me be this way? I turned it into asking the questions of others. So when I started asking those questions, I started digging underneath the layers and started uncovering the real reasons why people behaved certain ways and why they did certain things and didn't do the things that they wanted to do. And that's through those questions, I think people saw that I could, poke, quote unquote, that specific way. And that's why they're asking me, but I don't see it for myself.
Mm. So one of the things I like to highlight on the show is kind of what I call the intersection between our faith journey and our life journey, and then our life journey and our faith journey, whatever that is for us. Mm-hmm. How has that shaped part of this journey?
Well, so yeah, it's a really good question because I think without God, I wouldn't be here. If I look back in my entire life and I can, I remember someone once said that you can basically summarize your entire life on like 5-6 impactful events in life. We have these 5, maybe 6 impactful events that shape your life. And I look back in my life and what I see is God showed up every single, time in that moment, And, I was raised Catholic in Poland. Poland is 99% Catholic, went to church, did all that. I was an altar boy. In fact, when I was, I think, 12, 13, my aunt said that finally we're going to have a priest in the house, because I was constantly hanging out in the church. However, my relationship with the Lord was kind of like me, priest, the Lord, right? I had to go to the priest to get to the Lord kind of a thing. Actually, I couldn't get to the Lord because I had to talk to the priest, and he's got a connection to the Lord, like a phone. He calls him. So as I was, growing in life, I just had that type of relationship for the majority of my life. Now, that impactful moment in 2010, when my wife came to me and she said she wants a divorce, during that particular time, I've reconnected with the Lord in a way that I've never done before. And that means that I really just, in my, quote unquote, optimistic depression, I'm like, okay, maybe there is a way of actually connecting directly with the Lord. And I started digging into the Bible, started reading the Bible, started looking at like, what is it that, the Bible says? And that has helped me tremendously to, not only get out of the stinking thinking, but discover myself. I mean, I've never read the Bible before that. And when I went into it, I look from the perspective, someone told me, look, Proverbs, because Proverbs is like secrets to success. So I was at the time trying to get my business going. So I'm like, secret to success. So maybe there's something about business in there. So went into it with that thinking. And then before you know it, I started reading the rest of the book.
Yeah, there is a lot about business in Proverbs.
Oh, yeah, there is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I always tell people I learned more about business in Proverbs than I did getting an MBA. So you've mentioned a couple of times, optimistic depression. And obviously that sounds little bit like an oxymoron. So unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by optimistic depression?
Yeah. Sometimes I am myself an oxymoron, right? But what that means
I am too. Emphasis on the moron part, but
that's what I meant, right? So we're on the same page, Scott. All right. So what that means is the depression, right? Deep down inside, like I said earlier, I was thinking, what the heck is wrong with me? I actually wrote it in the book. Like this was the cultivating, question that I kept asking. And the answers I was getting is like, well, because you did this, because you're that, because you never did this. So you're constantly saying yes, and you're not helping, you're not there for your wife, not there for your kids, and all those things, right? So that led me to this deep rabbit hole of depression. So that's what was going on deep down. Now, however, if someone came to me, and this is one of the reasons why I'm so so important for people to go and speak to people, talk to people, and ask for help, is because when someone would come to me, and I was this people pleaser, right? And the people pleaser, someone would say, hey, Peter, how are you doing? Everything's great. I'm good. And they could see it, but I thought I was hiding it very well because I was saying, everything's good. I'm good. Things are good. In fact, even my kids kind of saw it because they said, Tata, you weren't there. Tata's dad in Polish. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was there physically. I wasn't there mentally. You know what I mean? So when you start to look from that was the optimistic part out there trying to put on this persona that a lot of us do. If you think about it, we try to project certain way. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, because, you're trying to project a version that you're not. And there's a clash. And guess what? Nothing works. You don't seem like things are working like you were hoping to. So that was that whole, thinking. And then when I finally let go of that looking good, there's what I was projecting, and ask for help and talk to someone, and they helped me get out of this. That's when I finally, got in actual help. So if someone's thinking like that, because from all the podcasts that I've done, when I explain that way, people say, that makes sense.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. So go ask for help, talk to somebody.
Yeah, there's always a little bit of that. I think we put on a little bit of we've got to put on the air, right? Everyone's doing okay, so I have to be doing okay, even though, it's kind of like when we ask people, hey, how are you doing this morning? We don't really expect an answer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We just expect, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Or I'm busy, or... Yeah. Whatever. We don't expect an actual answer.
Yeah.
like this is what's going on.
Yeah, and sometimes we ask that question in order for us to tell them what's going on. Right. We just want them to say, yeah, good. And then they ask you, how are you doing? Well, you said the busy part, right? Have you ever had a conversation? Well, how are you doing? Busy. And then they ask you, how are you doing? Oh, you think you're busy? Tell me, I'll tell you how busy I am,
Yeah. So, let me turn it into a brag in a way. Yeah.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the book. What brought you to write, My Authentic Rebirth? What brought you to write this message for folks? Talk about authenticity. Talking about what it's an interesting title. So where did it come from?
So it is So the title is My Authentic Self Rebirth. And actually at the top of the book, I have a line where people can, on the cover, write their own name on it. So it would be Scott's Authentic Self Rebirth, because I want this to be very personalized. And what had me do this is, I wrote this book to the version of me that was in 2012. Like the guy that was asking the question, what the heck is wrong with me? Why aren't things working? Why is this, there's so much uncertainty in my life. Why is this happening to me? Those kinds of questions that the guy was asking. And there was the manual that I wish I had back then to help me get out of this quote unquote stinking thinking. And over the past, I would say 4 or 5 years, as I'm coaching, as I'm going around the country and doing events, I've noticed there's a lot of people who feel uncertain, who are worried, who are thinking, what the heck is going on? Who some of them have feels like the world is turned upside down. And as I'm looking from that perspective, I've noticed that a lot of the people are living in this version of themselves that the world told them to be, and they don't have the solid foundation of that, their own authentic self to be able to stand. And when you finally get to that, guess what? The world can be going crazy, but nothing can shake you when you're back to your authenticity. So I wrote this book to help people see the true, real version of themselves. But in order to do that, they have to first uncover and awaken from that version that the world told them to be. Like, you need to be this way. You need to, however, the beliefs that they've been put on over the years, from the very young age.
How does somebody recognize if they're kind of not living their authentic self?
Well, I think, that's a great question. One is, seeing things from the outside world, people are, things are not working how you'd like them to be. I think that's a one big kind of a, light. The other thing is you feel deep down inside that something is off. I think we have this, like, I'm a Christian, right? So I feel like I know I have a Holy Spirit living within me, kind of a thing. It's a guiding, my guiding light. So I know that if I'm not aligning with that, it feels off. So if you feel that, that's how you know that you're probably not being your authentic self. And then, the other aspect from a more of like a strategic perspective, like you go and you want to, let's say, grow the business, and you need to reach out to certain people and then get stopped. When fear is in the way, where that worry is in the way, I think those are the signals that are telling you, okay, something is off. Because I don't think that's how we were meant to live.
When folks hear this and you're talking to them about leaning into who their authentic self is, for a lot of people, that sounds pretty overwhelming. They probably lived a long time, lived the way they are, things aren't working right, things don't feel great, but hey, it's good enough. It's okay. I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
I hear that from people a lot. What would you say to that person that's kind of got that feeling going on right now?
Well, that's a great question. I would ask him, so when you say that it's comfortable, I'm fine, is it truly that's how you feel, or is there some worry that you don't want to actually touch that? You know what I mean? And you're just making this kind of a, I'm good, because I did that too. But deep down inside, I really wanted to get to this, like, uncover this thing. You know what I mean? So, and then the overwhelm that comes in, it's because of the fact that they think it's such a monumental thing that's going to shake up their entire world. I mean, think about it this way. Like, I was 35 years old, sitting in a mastermind room and talking about my story. And one of the members in there says, well, dude, you're a people pleaser. I'm like, what? No way. What are you talking about, right? And finally it dawned on me that how I was operating life, was like out of this yes to everybody and everything except for me or the most important people in my life. So that was the one little choice that I could make now moving forward, that I could say yes. And I had put the different things in my life to be able to say yes. But, it changes the trajectory a little bit, and gets you thinking, man, I'm feeling empowered. I'm feeling confident. I'm feeling like I can take on this world. And by the way, that's never too late. Whether you are 20 years old and you are 80 years old, I think we all, the way we were put on this earth, what God made us to be, is to live that authentic self. And that there is I think everybody has their own journey. And whenever you discover it, whenever you get back to it, that's your time. That's when it's supposed to happen. So I would encourage people to just ask a few questions, like in the first part of the book, I just have the part of awakening. So they just go into the self-discovery mode, just asking certain questions that helps them uncover it. Yeah. And I will tell you this, people who go through it, they feel relief. I've seen this a lot of times where people, when they read some of this, they feel relief, like they discover something. Oh, so that's why I did this thing that way. So that's why, like, when people say something to me, I get upset. All right. So now I feel like I'm more empowered to be able to move forward in life.
Mm-hmm.
Hope that makes sense, Scott.
Absolutely. One of the other kind of things that I've heard people say when you start talking to them about, digging into who they really are is, I can't do that because that's selfish. And you mentioned being a people pleaser, and that's usually the people I hear it from. That's selfish. I can't spend all of that time on myself, because there's all these other things that I need to take care of, and other people I need to take care of. What would you say to the person that's hearing all of this and saying, no, that's just too selfish?
Well, that's a great question, because I was in that place myself. So I would say this: if you're empty, how are you going to actually help other people? And what ends up happening most of the time, I find people pleasers are running on fumes, because they are pouring out, doing for other people. They're helping them, and they're saying yes to everybody and everything. And they're running around like a chicken with a head cut off, right? And what ends up happening is they're running on empty. So unless you are fully, I would say, pour into yourself. Like every single morning, I spend quiet time with the Lord, with myself, and go through this. That is a really important part for me, so I can set myself up for the day that when my wife comes home, when my kids come home, guess what? I can give them the best. So now what ends up happening by me being quote unquote selfish, I'm actually selfless for the rest of the day because I'm full to be able to support the others that are important to me. And I show up differently, and they see me differently, and all of a sudden the relationships start to work differently. So that's kind of what I would say. And I would say this is the most important. In fact, like there was a chapter in the book where I talk about love. And, because Bible says love others like you would love yourself, And I started asking the question, okay, so that's good. I love that. I mean, loving people that I like, that's good. Enemies, I don't know about that, right? Because that's when it kind of hits. But then I ask myself, okay, so how do I love myself? Because in order for me to love somebody else, I need to love myself a certain way. So it's interesting how it comes back to me to figure that part out. So that's how I would approach that conversation.
Mm-hmm. The last kind of thing I want to dig in a little bit is, and I'm big on, one of the phrases I use is helping people find their why. People have heard that on the show before. We've talked a lot about it in different ways. And I know that aligns with your message as well. Talk a little bit about what that means. What's the difference between, I think a lot of times when people here find their why, they think of it just in terms of goals, in terms of, starting a business or this or that or the other thing. And I think it means something different. So unpack that a little bit. Why is the why so important? Not to ask a redundant question, but there you go.
Yeah. The why, I truly believe that every single person who are up to something in life needs a strong why. And why, the way I look at it is like your fuel. The goals that you are going after are those markers, those milestones that you want to hit in order to get to the certain point. So, every single person that I, coach in the mastermind, in my own, they have a vision, what I call vision for their life and the vision for their business. So in order to live that vision, you need that fuel that hits you emotionally, that gets you going in here to be able to get through some of the obstacles that are going to show up on the way there. Because they will, right? It would be so much nicer if there was no obstacles. It would be like smooth sailing, right? Wouldn't it? But that's not the case. So that why is that fuel that has to touch you emotionally and, create a really powerful picture in your mind that gets you going through those times. I created for myself. I had to dig deeper. I'll give you an example. Back in, I think, 2000, I won't say 13, 14, that coach, I wanted to go to the gym because, get out of the stinking thinking. That's one of the things that you should do. Everybody tells us, but I could never do it. And, kept asking me questions, kind of dig. So why aren't you going? Well, because, I have all kinds of different excuses. I mean, I could give you excuses. The cows come home. I put shoes in front of my door, workout clothes in front of my door so that I don't get out the door before I put the workout clothes on. And that didn't happen, right? So then he finally started asking me the questions, and he knew how important my kids were to me. And he goes, So if you don't go to the gym, guess what? This ends up to your health. You're going to get diabetes, you're going to get heart disease, and there's, risks that come with it. I'm like, okay, that didn't really hit much. And then he says, well, what if because you're being not going to the gym, your daughter, when she gets married, when she gets older, she's standing in the end of the aisle and she's looking to her side and there is nobody there because you were too selfish to go to the gym. And that like hit like a knife in the heart. And this guy is now my best friend, right? But what ended up happening, that fuel, that picture got me really emotional. And I said, there is no way that I'm going to allow that to happen. Well, with what I can do, I'm going to go to the gym. And from that day on, I started going to the gym. And now it's like a religious thing. I go to the gym, pretty much every single day, every day because of that mental picture. Mm-hmm. So that is the why. That's the juice that gets you going.
So I've got a few questions that I like to ask all of my guests. But before I go there, is there anything else about your journey or the book that you'd like to share with the listener?
No, I would just say one thing in regards to this journey is that recognize that we all have, the journey that we go on in this life. And we tend to overcomplicate things. And if you really think about it, if you just get back to being present in life and being, intentional and present with every single moment that you are doing in your life, all of a sudden it changes the trajectory. Like that simple thing of just being present. That's simple. I didn't say it's easy, but it's a very simple thing of just being present at every moment, because every single thing that you're doing that very moment is the most important thing. Then guess what? All of a sudden it shifts your entire life. So that's, and that authenticity thing is, aligns with that, because I think that's what think about, if you know a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old, do you think they're like distracted or they're pretty intentional in that very thing that they're doing in that very moment? They are so in this, playing this game or whatever that nobody's going to distract them, kind of thing, So, or if they want ice cream, guess what? Nobody's going to distract them from getting the ice cream, right? They're going to ask you 20,000 times for that ice cream. They're very dedicated, So that's kind of thing that I would tell people.
So my brand is Inspired Stewardship, and I kind of run things through that lens of stewardship. And yet I've discovered over the years that that's one of those words that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Mm-hmm. So for you, when you hear the word stewardship, what does that word mean to you?
Well, to me, it means taking responsibility and sharing what your story was with others. Meaning like, I think we are brought here on this earth to be able to help others. It's not about us so much. It's about others, helping other people. So it's your responsibility to share this message, because every single time I share my message, it's not coming from the place of like selflessness, but actually helping others. I have people come up to me and say how that has impacted them. So I think, it doesn't matter what walk you came from, who you are, where you're from, but you have a story. And when you go through this journey, I think it's important for you to go and impact someone else's life. I think if we just did that, everybody, man, this world would be a better place.
So this is my favorite question that I like to ask everybody. Imagine for a moment that I invented this magic machine. And with this machine, I was able to take you from where you are today and transport you into the future, maybe 150, maybe 250 years. And through the power of this machine, you were able to look back and see your entire life, see all of the connections, all of the ripples, mm-hmm. all of the impacts you've left. What impact do you hope you've had in the world?
Well, first and foremost, I would hope that my kids would find their authenticity a lot sooner in their life through my conversations, to be able to help them get through it so they don't have to go through this entire life. Granted, it's a, journey, but find their authenticity. And then, I would love to help people shift their, lives. I mean, the reason why I wrote this book is because I want to impact as many people as I can. When you get back to your authenticity, I would want people to see I've changed this marriage. This person got back to the Lord. This person, they were on the brink of, divorce, or they were on the brink of, ending their life, and now they made a different choice. And guess what? Every single time I see this, later on in their life, they make an impact. So we are here for a reason. There's something much bigger that you're meant to be here for. Look for that perspective. So that's kind of what I would go from. Mm. That's a great question, by the way.
It's my version of the obituary question.
Oh yeah, we do this at the events, and it's a really it shakes people up big time.
The reason I like to ask that question that way, though, is because I've always thought the obituary question is a little morbid and depresses people. So trying to ask it a little nicer way than hey, you're dead, write your own obituary. So what's coming next? What's on the roadmap as you continue on this journey?
Well, the next thing is I'm just, I created this community out of this book. So the next thing is building the community to help people get back to authenticity. By doing that, the marriages change, the health changes, the businesses change, because I have a lot of entrepreneurs. So I just want to expand the message, keep sharing the message, keep bringing people back to their authenticity.
Absolutely. So you can find out more about Peter over at myauthenticrebirth.com. All the information about the book, everything is over there. Of course, I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. Peter, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listener?
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on here, Scott. I think it was a great conversation. I would just say that, go pick up the book. I think it's, from all the conversations that I've had, a lot of people has made an impact, like you said in the link. And if you have any questions, reach out to me anywhere on the Instagrams or wherever. I'll be more than happy to answer the questions. And, step out of your comfort zone, I would say, because it's not just about you. It's about the people who are most important to you in life. And when you do that, all of a sudden things shift in your favor. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Go over to inspiredstewardship.com/iTunes rate, all one word, iTunes rate. It'll take you through how to leave a rating and review and how to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get every episode as it comes out in your feed. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.